Something huge just happened to T.I., and fans are starting to ask a question nobody ever thought they would ask. Is this really the end of the King of the South? For decades, T.I. has been one of the most powerful and controversial figures in hip-hop. Platinum albums, Hollywood movies, Grammy Awards, he seemed untouchable. But behind the fame, there has always been another story. Arrests, federal investigations, courtrooms, and enemies waiting for the moment he would finally fall. And now, with legal battles piling up, a federal trial approaching, and one of the biggest rap beefs of the decade exploding with 50 Cent, the situation around T.Y. is more dangerous than ever. At the Grammy Awards in 2026, T.I. shocked everyone when he made a sudden announcement. He said his next album, Kill the King, would be his last album ever. That alone was enough to make fans panic. But when you look at everything happening around him right now, the timing suddenly feels very different. Because T.I. isn't just saying goodbye to music. He's heading back into court. He's facing lawsuits that could explode into something much bigger. And rumors are spreading that 50 Cent might be preparing a documentary digging into every scandal T.I. has ever faced. Which means the rapper who once crowned himself the King of the South is now surrounded by enemies, accusations, and legal battles all at the same time. And the most shocking part? This story didn't start yesterday. It started almost 30 years ago, with a teenager from Bankhead, Atlanta who thought he could outsmart the streets. But that one mistake created a chain reaction that followed him for decades. Arrest after arrest, case after case. Until now, when the question is no longer whether T.I. can survive another controversy. The real question is this: will T.I. walk away from rap and live in peace? Or will the courts finally end the story of the King of the South forever? And trust me, what happened next in his life was even crazier than anyone expected. To understand why people are suddenly asking whether T.I. might be saying goodbye forever, you have to go all the way back to where his story began. Because long before the fame, the Grammys, the Hollywood roles, and the millions of dollars, there was a teenager from Atlanta trying to survive the streets. His real name is Clifford Joseph Harris Jr., born September 25, 1980, and raised in Atlanta, specifically the Bankhead area, a place known for producing both hip-hop legends and some of the toughest stories in the South. And from a young age, Harris believed he was destined for something bigger, but the streets had their own plans. By the late 1990s, he was already caught up in trouble with the law. At just 18 years old, he was arrested and convicted on drug charges involving cocaine distribution. It was the kind of mistake that could have ended a life before it even started. Instead, it became the beginning of a reputation that would follow him for decades. Because even after that conviction, Harris didn't disappear. He turned to music. And surprisingly, it worked. In the late 1990s, he connected with music executive Kawan KP Prather, who saw potential in the young rapper. Harris joined KP's company, Ghetto Vision Entertainment, which was connected to major labels like Arista and Layface Records. For a kid from Bankhead, it looked like the dream was finally happening, but the road to success wasn't smooth. His first album, I'm Serious, released in 2001, didn't perform the way anyone hoped. Critics were lukewarm, sales were disappointing, and the label quickly lost interest. For many artists, that would have been the end, but not for T.I. Instead of giving up, he doubled down. He signed with Atlantic Records, created his own label Grand Hustle Records, and started building a new identity. That identity was something the world hadn't quite seen before. Trap music. Alongside Atlanta legends like Young Jeezy and Gucci Mane, T.I. helped define the gritty southern sound that would eventually dominate hip-hop. And then suddenly the same kid who had been written off after his first album was everywhere. In 2003, his album Trap Music exploded onto the charts. Songs like Rubber Band Man became massive hits, and T.I. finally entered the Billboard Hot 100 for the first time. But even as his career skyrocketed, the legal problems never really went away. In 2004, just as his popularity was exploding, he was arrested again, this time for violating parole. For many fans, this was the first moment they realized something troubling about T.Y.'s story. Success and trouble seemed to follow him at the same time. Every time his career reached a new level, another legal issue appeared. Yet somehow he kept rising. His albums kept dominating the charts. In fact, 3 of his projects eventually debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, including the legendary album King. That album contained one of the biggest songs of his career, What You Know, which turned him into a superstar almost overnight. Suddenly, T.I. wasn't just a rapper. He was a brand. Hollywood noticed. He starred in the film ATL, a movie that became a cultural classic in Atlanta. Corporations noticed too. He appeared in commercials alongside NASCAR driver Dale Earnhardt Jr. And in 2006, Forbes reported that T.I. had earned around $16 million in a single year. For a moment, it looked like he had escaped the cycle of trouble completely. But that illusion didn't last. Because in October 2007, just as he was about to perform at the BET Hip Hop Awards, federal agents arrested him. And this time, the charges were serious. Authorities accused him of attempting to illegally purchase machine guns and silencers. Because of his previous felony conviction, he was legally forbidden from owning firearms. But investigators claimed he had given a bodyguard $12,000 in cash to buy them for him. Federal agents had been watching, recording calls, tracking movements, waiting for the moment he would try to pick up the weapons. And when that moment came, they arrested him in a shopping center parking lot in Atlanta. What they found made the situation even worse. 3 firearms were inside the car he drove to the meeting. One of them was loaded and sitting next to his seat. Then agents searched his house. Inside his bedroom closet, they discovered 6 more guns, 5 of them loaded. The charges were so serious that T.I. could have faced up to 30 years in federal prison. For a moment, it looked like the career of one of hip-hop's biggest stars might end right there. But through a plea deal, he received a much lighter sentence. 1 year and 1 day in prison, plus community service and house arrest. Still, the damage to his reputation had already begun. And this is where another major character enters the story. Because when the plea deal became public, 50 Cent accused T.I. of cooperating with authorities. In hip-hop culture, that accusation is explosive. The word snitch carries serious consequences. And that moment planted the seed for a feud that would simmer quietly for years before exploding again, nearly 2 decades later. After serving his sentence, T.I. tried to rebuild his image. He filmed a reality show called T.I.'s Road to Redemption, where he visited schools and community groups talking about the dangers of the path he had taken. For a while, it seemed like he was turning his life around. But then in 2010, the cycle repeated itself. He was arrested again, this time in Los Angeles for possession of ecstasy while still on probation. The result? Another 11 months in prison. And once again, critics began asking the same question. Would T.I. ever escape the pattern of success followed by legal trouble? Because by that point, it had already happened too many times. And what nobody realized back then was that the most dangerous battles of his life were still waiting years in the future. By the early 2000s, many people believed T.I. had finally learned from his mistakes. He had already survived federal gun charges, served prison time, and he had publicly promised to turn his life around. For a while, and it actually looked like he had. His music career was still strong, his business ventures were growing, and his public image slowly started recovering. But behind the scenes, the storm surrounding T.I. was far from over. Because the legal issues that once revolved around guns and drugs were about to be replaced by something much more dangerous. Allegations. And those allegations would threaten not only his career, but his freedom. The 2021 allegations that shook everything. In 2021, a shocking wave of accusations began spreading across social media involving T.I. and his wife Tameka "Tiny" Harris. The situation started when an influencer named Sabrina Peterson made a public claim that T.I. had once pulled a gun on her during an argument years earlier. Look, that accusation alone was explosive, but what happened next was even bigger. Peterson began posting messages and statements from other women who claimed they had disturbing experiences involving the couple. Some alleged they had been drugged. Others claimed they had been pressured into sexual encounters. Some even accused the pair of serious criminal behavior. Within days, the internet was flooded with headlines. More than 30 women reportedly contacted attorneys with similar accusations. Lawyers representing alleged victims sent letters accusing the couple of shocking crimes including drugging women, coercion, sexual assault, kidnapping, false imprisonment. The claims were so serious that they immediately threatened T.Y.'s entire career. For the first time in decades, now the rapper who once dominated hip-hop headlines was facing accusations that went far beyond music or street drama. And the fallout began instantly. Hollywood starts backing away. At the time the allegations surfaced, T.I. had quietly built a strong presence in Hollywood. He had already appeared in several films, including Ant-Man and its sequel, Ant-Man and the Wasp. But once the accusations spread online, his involvement in the upcoming Marvel movie Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, suddenly disappeared. Officially, Marvel never confirmed the allegations were the reason, but insiders said the studio wanted to avoid controversy, and that wasn't the only project affected. The VH1 reality series T.I. and Tiny. Friends and Family Hustle was also suspended. The message from Hollywood was clear until the situation was resolved. T.I. had become a risk. The lawsuits begin. The accusations eventually moved from social media into courtrooms. Peterson filed a defamation lawsuit against the Harrises, claiming they had damaged her reputation while denying her claims. At the same time, other civil complaints appeared accusing the couple of misconduct. One of the most serious lawsuits came in January 2024, when a woman identified as Jane Doe filed a complaint in Los Angeles. She claimed that in 2005, after meeting T.I. and Tiny in a nightclub VIP section, she was given a drink that had been spiked. According to the lawsuit, she was later taken to a hotel room where she alleged she was assaulted. The lawsuit was filed under California's Sexual Abuse and Cover-Up Accountability Act, which temporarily allowed older cases to be brought to court even if the statute of limitations had expired. For T.I., this meant that accusations from nearly 2 decades earlier could suddenly be argued in court. The case gets dismissed. But the damage is done. In August 2024, the Jane Doe lawsuit was dismissed after the accuser failed to respond to a motion from the defense within the required time frame. But the judge left the door open for the complaint to be amended and refiled. Meanwhile, the defamation case involving Sabrina Peterson dragged on for years. Court records showed a chaotic legal process. Peterson changed attorneys multiple times. Deadlines were missed, hearings were skipped. Eventually, in March 2025, a judge dismissed Peterson's lawsuit entirely. The court also ordered her to pay roughly $96,000 in legal fees to the Harrises. Peterson later attempted to reopen the case but failed. For T.I. and Tiny, it looked like a legal victory. But the story didn't end there, because another legal battle had already begun: the federal defamation trial. Even after the lawsuit stalled, the accusations themselves continued circulating online. In response, T.I. filed his own federal defamation lawsuit against Peterson. He claimed she had knowingly spread false accusations about him, including allegations that he was involved in sex trafficking investigations. According to court filings, those statements caused serious damage to his reputation and career. That case is scheduled for trial in June 2026. And depending on what evidence or testimony emerges during that trial, it could reopen the entire controversy. Which means the legal shadow over T.I.'s life still hasn't disappeared. Meanwhile, the 50 Cent war returns. Just as the legal battles continued brewing in the background, another storm suddenly erupted. His long-running feud with 50 Cent exploded again. And this time, it got personal. The conflict originally started back in 2007, when 50 Cent accused T.Y. of being a snitch after his gun case plea deal. For years, the tension simmered quietly. Then, during the pandemic, T.I. publicly challenged 50 Cent to a versus battle, a live stream music competition popular at the time. 50 Cent declined, but the tension never fully disappeared. Then in 2026, everything exploded again. T.I. appeared on the podcast $1 Million Worth of Game and suggested that a Versus battle had once been planned, but 50 backed out. 50 Cent responded online by calling T.I. King Rat. That insult triggered a full-blown war. Diss tracks, social media attacks, old accusations resurfacing. Then things went even further. 50 Cent posted AI-generated memes mocking T.I.'s wife and son. T.I. responded with multiple diss songs including War, Lessons, and What Bully. The feud quickly escalated beyond the two rappers. T.I.'s sons, King Harris and Damani Harris, even joined the fight, releasing their own diss tracks aimed at 50 Cent. One of the most controversial moments came when King Harris wore a shirt referencing 50 Cent's late mother in a music video. Even T.I. later admitted he regretted letting his children get involved, but by that point, the feud had already spiraled into something far bigger than a rap battle. And then another rumor began spreading. That 50 Cent might be producing a documentary exposing T.I. and Tiny. If that project ever happens, it could bring every accusation, lawsuit, and controversy back into the spotlight. And that possibility has many people wondering whether T.I.'s past might finally catch up with him. But believe it or not, the most shocking part of this entire story hasn't even happened yet. Because while all of these battles are happening, T.I. has made a decision that nobody expected. He says he's walking away from rap forever. And the reason why might surprise you. Everything surrounding T.I. was already chaotic. But the moment he stepped onto the stage at the Grammy Awards in early 2026, the entire story suddenly took a turn nobody expected. Because instead of talking about new music or celebrating his legacy, T.I. dropped a statement that instantly shocked fans. He said the next album he releases will be his last album ever. The title of that project? Kill the King. And the moment those words left his mouth, the internet exploded with speculation. Was this simply a retirement announcement? Or was something else happening behind the scenes? Because when you look at the timing, it feels almost too perfect. Right now, T.I. is surrounded by legal battles, industry drama, and one of the most public rap feuds in years. At the same time, the federal defamation trial involving Sabrina Peterson is moving closer. The trial is scheduled for June 2026, which means within months, T.I. will be walking into a courtroom again. Not as a defendant this time, but as the man accusing someone else of destroying his reputation. But trials like that rarely stay simple. Because once witnesses begin testifying, or once lawyers start presenting evidence, and once both sides start digging through years of accusations, things can get messy very quickly. Especially in a case like this where the allegations involve claims of abuse, misconduct, and trafficking rumors that have already circulated across the internet for years. And that's exactly why some observers believe the 2026 trial could become one of the most explosive moments of T.Y.'s entire career. Because even though prosecutors previously declined to file criminal charges in one of the alleged incidents from 2005 due to the statute of limitations, the accusations themselves never truly disappeared. They are still part of the public conversation, still part of court filings, still part of online debates that continue every time T.I.'s name trends on social media, which means the trial could bring everything back into the spotlight again. Every accusation, every rumor, every unanswered question. And while that legal drama is building behind the scenes, the war between T.Y. and 50 Cent is making the situation even more explosive. Because their feud has gone far beyond music. Diss tracks are dropping, social media posts are getting more personal, family members are getting involved, and rumors are spreading that 50 Cent might be preparing something even bigger. A documentary. Several entertainment insiders have suggested that the G-Unit boss could be developing a project that dives into every controversy connected to T.I. and Tameka Tiny Harris. And if that actually happens, it would mean millions of viewers around the world revisiting every allegation, every lawsuit, and every moment that has followed T.I. throughout his career. For a rapper who is already facing a federal court case and a massive public feud, that kind of spotlight could be dangerous. Because once documentaries begin digging into a story like this, they often bring forward new witnesses, new evidence, and new narratives. Which is why some fans are starting to believe that TY's retirement announcement might not just be about music, it might be about survival. Because after decades of success, controversy, and courtroom drama, he may finally be trying to step away from the spotlight before the next storm hits. In fact, during interviews, T.I. has openly said he wants to focus on something very different. Not family, comedy, business ventures. He has talked about spending more time with his children and grandchildren. He has said that the ego of being the king of the South created enemies he no longer wants to deal with. And that is exactly why he chose the title Kill the King for his final album. Not because someone else defeated him, but because he wants to end that persona himself. The idea is symbolic. For years, T.I. proudly carried the title of King of the South. But in chess, the entire objective of the game is simple. Kill the king. And according to T.I., that is exactly what he is doing. Ending the ego, ending the persona, ending the era. But here's the problem. Even if he walks away from rap, he can't walk away from everything else. The lawsuits are still there, the accusations are still there. Check, the feud with 50 Cent is still escalating, and the federal courtroom is waiting. Which means while T.I. might be ready to say goodbye to the music industry, the drama surrounding his life might not be ready to let him go. And that's exactly why people are starting to ask the question that nobody ever imagined asking about the King of the South. Is this really the final chapter of T.I.'s career? Or is the biggest battle of his life about to begin? And once that question started spreading across the internet, the reaction was immediate. Fans, critics, bloggers, and hip-hop insiders all jumped into the debate surrounding T.I. Because no matter how people feel about him, one thing is undeniable. For nearly 2 decades, T.I. has been one of the most influential figures in Southern hip-hop. Watch, the man who helped push trap music into the mainstream. The rapper who once confidently called himself the King of the South. So when rumors started circulating that this chapter of his life might actually be ending, social media exploded. Some fans were heartbroken. They began posting old clips of his classic songs. Moments from concerts, scenes from the film ATL that made him a cultural icon. One fan wrote, "Trap music wouldn't be what it is today without T.I. You can't erase that legacy." Another post read, "He survived prison, survived the streets, survived the industry. If this is the end of his music career, he deserves respect." But not everyone saw it that way. Critics quickly jumped into the conversation too. Some pointed out that T.Y.'s career has always been surrounded by controversy. The arrests, the probation violations, the lawsuits, the accusations that have followed him for years. For those critics, the retirement announcement didn't look like a graceful farewell. It looked like an escape. One viral comment said, "Convenient timing to retire when court cases are getting closer." Another wrote, "This isn't a goodbye tour, this is damage control." And as those arguments exploded online, the drama surrounding the rapper's feud with 50 Cent continued pouring gasoline on the fire. Because the two rappers weren't just exchanging insults anymore, they were dragging their families into the conflict. Memes were spreading, diss tracks were dropping, and the insults were becoming more personal every day. At one point, 50 Cent posted AI-generated images mocking T.I.'s wife Tameka Tiny Harris, which immediately sparked outrage from T.I.'s supporters. And then T.I.'s son King Harris fired back online. Then more diss tracks followed. Suddenly, what started as an old rap rivalry had transformed into something far messier. An entire internet war. And in the middle of that chaos, rumors began circulating that could make things even worse. Because several entertainment insiders suggested that 50 Cent might be planning a documentary project about the controversies surrounding T.I. and Tiny. Now remember, this is the same 50 Cent who has already produced major television series and documentaries. Which means if he really decided to tell that story, the project could easily reach millions of viewers around the world. And if that documentary ever happens, every accusation, every lawsuit, every rumor from the past 5 years would likely return to the spotlight. For someone already preparing for a federal courtroom battle, that kind of attention could be dangerous. Because documentaries have a way of reopening stories people thought were already finished. They bring forward new voices, new witnesses, new evidence, and sometimes new problems. Which is exactly why some people believe the next few months could become the most critical moment of T.I.'s entire career. Because right now, 3 different storms are building around him at the same time. A massive rap feud, a major federal court trial, and the final album he says will end his music career forever. But here's where things get even more complicated. Because despite all the chaos surrounding him, I insist he's ready to walk away from the crown. And he has said repeatedly that the title, King of the South, created as many enemies as it did fans. He believes the ego behind that title pushed him into conflicts that could have been avoided, which is why his final album is called Kill the King. The message is simple. He's not waiting for someone else to take the crown. He's destroying it himself, ending the persona, ending the era, and focusing on something he says matters more now than fame. Peace. Time with family. New creative paths like comedy and film. But here's the twist that keeps everyone watching this story closely. Even if T.I. walks away from rap, he can't walk away from the past. The lawsuits still exist. The accusations still exist. The courtroom still exists. And the enemies he made along the way haven't disappeared. Which means while he may be trying to close one chapter of his life, another chapter might be about to open. And depending on what happens next, the story of the King of the South may not end with a peaceful retirement. It might end with something far more dramatic. And that's exactly why the biggest question surrounding T.I. right now isn't about music. It's about what happens next. Because when you step back and look at everything happening around him at the same time, the situation starts to look almost unbelievable. A rapper who once dominated the charts, a career that survived prison, scandals, and decades of controversy. Now, suddenly standing at a crossroads where everything could change again. On one side of the story is the music, his final album, Kill the King, a project he says will close the chapter on the persona that defined his career. On the other side is the courtroom, a federal defamation trial involving Sabrina Peterson scheduled for June 2026 that could drag years of accusations back into the spotlight. And surrounding all of that, a rap war with 50 Cent that seems to get more personal every week. When all 3 of those forces collide, the pressure becomes enormous, which is why fans are split into 2 very different camps right now. Some believe T.I. is simply evolving. They think he's reached a point where the fame, the ego, and the constant drama of the music industry no longer interest him. After all, he's already achieved things many rappers dream about. Multi-platinum albums, major movie roles, millions of fans around the world. From that perspective, retiring from rap might actually be the smartest decision he could make. But other people see something very different. They believe the timing of his retirement announcement feels suspicious, because it's happening at the exact same moment that lawsuits, accusations, and public conflicts are reaching a boiling point. And critics are asking one uncomfortable question. Is T.I. stepping away from rap? Or is he stepping away before the next storm hits? The truth is, nobody outside his inner circle knows the answer. What we do know is that the next few months could determine how the final chapter of his story is written. If the court trial ends in his favor, it could clear a cloud that has been hanging over him for years. If the feud with 50 Cent fades away, the drama could finally calm down. And if Kill the King becomes a successful final album, he might walk away from the industry exactly the way he wants, as a legend. But if things go the other direction, if the trial becomes explosive, if new accusations appear, if the feud escalates even further, then the ending of T.Y.'s story might look very different from the peaceful retirement he's describing. And that's why millions of people are watching this situation closely. Because right now, the King of the South is standing on a chessboard surrounded by enemies, lawsuits, and unfinished battles. And in chess, the entire goal of the game is simple: protect the king, or destroy him. Which raises one final question that only time can answer. Will T.I. truly ride off into the sunset after his final album? Or is the most dramatic chapter of his life still waiting to unfold? Now we want to hear from you. Do you think T.I.'s retirement is genuine? Or do you believe something much bigger is happening behind the scenes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the biggest hip-hop stories, controversies, and industry drama, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because if the next twist in this story happens, you already know the internet is going to explode again. The story of T.I. has always been about survival. Surviving the streets of Atlanta, surviving prison sentences, surviving rap beefs, controversies, and scandals that would have destroyed most careers. Yet somehow, every time it looked like the end, Ty found a way to return. That's why this moment feels different. Because for the first time in decades, he's not fighting to stay on top of the music industry. He's preparing to walk away from it. And when he announced that Kill the King will be his final album, the message was symbolic but powerful. The crown that defined his career is being put down by his own hands. But even if the music stops, the story itself isn't finished yet. The federal trial is still approaching. The feud with 50 Cent is still heating up. Rumors of documentaries, investigations, and new accusations continue to circulate, which means the next chapter of T.I.'s life may not be about rap at all. It could be about reputation, about clearing his name, or about facing the consequences of battles that have followed him for years. And that's why the question fans are asking right now is bigger than music. Is this really the final goodbye of the King of the South? Or just the beginning of the most dramatic chapter in his entire story? Because if history has taught us anything about T.I., it's this. Every time people think his story is over, another twist appears, and the world starts watching all over again. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think T.I. is truly retiring and stepping into a quieter life with his family? Or do you believe the legal battles and industry drama surrounding him will pull him back into the spotlight? Drop your opinion in the comments below. And if you want more explosive hip-hop stories, industry secrets, and viral breakdowns just like this one, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, the next update in this story could change everything.